This is my elk recap for 2025. I'm just going to do a live here. I'm going to keep it semi reasonable in time, 15-20 minutes. Going to do 2 to 3 episodes, and this is going to be the beginning. So this is going to be up to day 5, I think. We're gonna see how time goes. So this is my 3rd year of archery elk hunting. Really my 2nd year actually taking it serious. I hunted in the same area this year as I did last year in North Idaho. Set up camp, hunted alone, and we set up camp with a camper, which was awesome. Not as mobile as truck camping, but pretty well was going to stick around in the area that I knew. Dad helped out, which was incredible. Nice sleeping in a camper, that's for sure. And access to 4-wheeler and side-by-side to run around, which is a huge advantage to just driving a truck around. So I think that is one big recommendation that I would make, is having something other than your truck or your vehicle to get around from spot to spot. Or even if I'm truck camping, I would like to have the truck set up in a campsite and then have, whether it's a dirt bike, 4-wheeler, side-by-side, to cruise around from spot to spot. But so same area, North Idaho. I had success last year, my 2nd year, killed a stellar bull, bigger than I definitely thought. So going into this year, my goals were that I would get at least a branch antlered bull or bigger. Didn't necessarily have to be a 5-point or 6-point, but I wasn't going to shoot a spike. And that was kind of my expectation going into this year. Also, am not I'm not delusional to think that I'm an awesome archery elk hunter yet, just because I killed a stellar bull in my 2nd year. So I want to be realistic on my goals, but I also didn't want to go back and shoot a spike. Even if it was on the last day, I wouldn't have. I made that decision. So I had something really surprising happened. Later on, I'll cover it in this episode. It really foiled probably one of my best stocks I had, at least early on. And that was really unexpected. So let's get into day 1. So September 18th was day 1. I waited towards the end of the season to start hunting, or mid to end of the season. I had 4-wheeler with and my truck, and I did a big hike through. And this hike through ended on this ridge area that I had known and hunted a lot last year. And actually, I was in on some spikes quite a bit along that ridge last year. But I started from the opposite side, dropped off the 4-wheeler, drove the truck around, and hiked up. Cool thing was, I just happened to jump into the woods in this spot. I mean, I looked at the ridge and hiked up this ridge so I get up to this peak, and then I was going from peak to peak to peak, and ended up jumping right in on this little ribbon trail that people must have put out. It wasn't cut out at all. It was just basically following a decently well-used game trail. And on the other side of all these peaks and ridges, someone had done the same thing. I'm guessing the same people, same locals. But that one was much more set in on those game trails and the trails up on top of that ridge. And I knew that there was some logging going on in the area, but I didn't think they were going to be that far east. I thought they were going to be on the other side of this drainage. So when I started going up, I was hearing a lot of logging action. And I was thinking it was on the other side of the road, because you know how the sound can just travel in the mountains, and I thought it was just bouncing. But as I got up to the top of that first ridge, I was really realizing that it wasn't getting any quieter. It was basically just staying the same. So in the end, it was like parallel to me the whole time. Got up to that road, to that top, and there was the logging operation right there. So that was kind of a bummer, and also kind of got to worry a little bit because you don't want to be hunting or hiking close to logging operation. So after handing on, I ended up just going right across the road and just cruising up that ridge, trying to get away from the operation. And I was moving pretty quickly, and the sound did fall back, so that was good. I got up to the peak, took a little bit of a break. No sign, no fresh sign, so I started going down onto that ridgeline trail. Then ran into the road again, and this was a fresh log road. So, like, that whole peak hike was kind of not worth it because I'm not going to find elk around a logging operation. So what I should have done was hiked along that logging road, but at the same time, I don't want to be hiking on logging roads where trucks are coming. So it is what it is. Just got out of there. That was kind of a waste of kind of the beginning of the morning, but it happens. So got out of there, continued on the ridge on these peaks, did a lot of locating, bugling, even though it was midday, but I just wanted to throw them out there, see if I could hear anything talking. And according to everyone on this year, like, that was supposed to be like peak rut season based on the moon phase and everything. So, but no sign, didn't hear anything. Even once I got to that ridge that I found a lot of elk sign in last year, and stalked a few bulls a couple times last year, but they just weren't in there. Dropped a camera there this end of the summer, maybe a month out from season. Got up to the camera and someone smashed the sensor, so that was great. Freaking people. I don't know who does. I don't know who needs to go out of their way to smash other people's cameras. I mean, it's legal to have your camera out. If you're mad about it, go set your own camera out. But so it was kind of a bummer. Did have some. I had some stuff on that. Oh, my audio was good here. No elk on that camera. It was only live for like 4 days, which is kind of lame. Did have a black bear on it, so that was cool. Had a mule deer on it, a small, like 2-point buck. And I haven't seen any mule deer in this area in North Idaho before, but I actually heard that someone else had saw one in the area too, and I wonder if it was that same one. So it was cool seeing that on there. And then just some hands messing with the camera that broke the sensor, smashed the bottom of it. So I'm guessing they know where the SD card is at, so they try to smash the bottom, so then it pops it out, which is what happened. So it wasn't recording anymore, but with the sensor broken, it wouldn't have anyways. So finished out that hike along that ridge, went out to grab the four-wheeler. Early that morning when I was dropping off four-wheeler, it was really cool. There was a cow elk around it, or a moose cow around in the area, and you could see her pretty much every day off of that main road. And she had her calf with her. When I was dropping off that the four-wheeler, they were like 40 yards from me. So I was like kind of watching my back. So I was unloading the four-wheeler. Just not a care in the world. So yeah, hop back on the four-wheeler, and this was midday, around 2 to 3 o'clock. And I decided to go up high before heading back to the truck, and went up to the top of this peak where I spent a decent amount of time last year, and where I'd planned on doing a lot of my hunting around this mountain this year. Talked to a hunter up top there, tried to pick his brain a little bit. They were talking. I hadn't heard a bugle yet that day, on day one. He'd been into them, kind of all over, high, low, everywhere. Hiked over the ridge and kind of overseeing a whole drainage. And my plan was just kind of stake out and just listen as it turned to dark, and threw out a couple cow bugles, eventually threw out a locator bugle, and heard it sounded like two different bulls bugling down in that drainage. One off to the right, which was a good bugle with some lip balm action. And then at the same time, there's another elk on the other side of the drainage that was bugling back. In hindsight, I wonder if that one bugle just sounded too perfect, if that was a hunter. because I did run into that other guy afterwards, and he said he had a friend that was bugling. And I didn't say anything. You know, sometimes you want to keep your cards close to your chest, but didn't mention where I heard bugles from. But he said that his friend was bugling, but I think he mentioned it was on the other side of the ridge. But there's at least one bull down there, and it was down in there, so I don't think it was a hunter. So that was the end of day one. I had some solid stuff to go off of, so I was pumped about that. I heard some bugles towards the end of the day. So the next day, day 2, September 19th, I went up to that area. I actually hiked in lower down towards where that bugle was at. And this was a good like bedroom area. Didn't hear anything that day. And there was no like super fresh sign. There was sign within the past few weeks, but nothing super fresh. And in hindsight, I wish I would have followed it down further down the drainage and dropped in further to really check out all that area. But I went the opposite way and went up high and went up and around. Didn't hear anything through that, but I did stumble upon a good trail that went along that other ridge point on the other side of this drainage. And that came into play later on in my season, following that trail system. I have friends actually in camp that day, so I cut my hunt a little short as far as morning. I mean, it was midday, it was noon by the time I got out of there. The way I normally hunt is I stay out in the field all day. I will start in the morning before daylight, get out there, and I will literally stay out till dark. I won't always stay in the same spot, and honestly, sometimes I probably do stay too long and taking too much time in one spot. But if I get done with an area and make a big hike through or loop around, I'm going to take a little bit of a break in the field or at the four-wheeler, and then I'm going to head to the next spot. And that's just, I feel like I get a lot of action midday that I otherwise wouldn't. So, but went back to camp for a few hours. I actually got things set up because I didn't have any time. I was out in the field the first day and a half. So got some stuff set up around camp, hung out. Later on that evening, my dad dropped me off up above the same drainage that I got that bull last year. And I had a camera soaking down in there on a wallow. So I hiked in and didn't know if anything was down there. Dropped the four-wheeler off at the bottom because I was just going to hike all the way through because he was leaving camp. Come back a couple days later. So I hiked down in there, down into that drainage. And it was funny, I got an in-reach from him maybe 20 minutes later, 30 minutes later. He talked to some guys that were on a bull in that drainage. The couple days before that, they were hunting him. So I think they were kind of bummed out that I beat him to that drainage. So had a tree actually fall down just randomly on the other side of the small little jut out of the drainage, small little creek, I mean. And that actually bumped something further off from me. It scared the crap out of something, which now, a little bit after that, my dad messaged me about that bull being in there. And then it was funny, like right before that message, I'd heard a bugle. So, and I didn't send out anything, no locator bugles or anything. So, and then obviously I got that, hearing there's a big bull in there. So I was like, heck yeah. So kept getting down towards the bottom and worked my way over, but it was weird how the sound was acting in that drainage. It was just bouncing all over the place. It would sound like the bugle was up the drainage. Then it would sound like it was down the drainage. And it was really hard to locate where he was at. So it was getting close to dark. So it was later on when I got dropped off. And I was not able to get in on him before dark. And I might have sent out 1 or 2 locator bugles, but not too much. So I wasn't able to get in on him that night. But obviously that was my play the next morning. So went early in the morning started from the bottom, started working my way in. Heard him bugling pretty quickly that morning. I stayed quiet. I didn't throw any bugles out, and I just kept working my way up that drainage towards the area where I got that bull last year. And clearly he was talking a lot, and it was a good stalk because I didn't have to throw out any bugles. He didn't know I was there. He didn't know that another wannabe elk was in the area. He didn't know that a hunter or anyone was on him. So this was going to be a solid stalk on day 3, September 20th. And then I started hearing, I was getting in close. I was probably close to 100 yards. I was within 100 yards of him, but I had a creek in between us and a lot of thick stuff. So it's still a long process before I wanted to give away my location. And my goal was to get as tight as possible as long as the wind was good and just wait it out. If he was going to keep bugling, I honestly wasn't going to bugle at all. And just wait it out and try to get in his bubble and see if I can make something happen. And then I started hearing some dogs barking from the top of the drainage. And at first I was like, what the heck is that? What is going on? Because, it's just so faint and it's way in the distance. And then after about a few minutes, or not even, it started getting louder and louder. And I was like, that's not good. It's coming straight down the drainage. A few dogs at least. And the bull was actually still bugling with those dogs coming in on the drainage. So then I was starting to wonder, I was like, are they on that bull? Are they chasing that bull? But that's not, they're not going to be chasing a bull. And he would definitely not be bugling. And they came literally on the other side. So I was on the right side of the creek here. Creek is right here. He was bugling up over this way on the other side of the creek. And they must have came not too far from him. They came up right around on the other side of me. And I was sitting there like looking over, and I could hear stuff running, hear the dogs running, hear them barking. And then they came down and they came around in front of me. I couldn't see them, but I could hear them. Then they came up on this side of me, and they were barking around right here. And then kind of back and forth a little bit. And then they took off that way up on top of the ridge. And I backed out a little bit when all this was going on. And then once the barking kind of got faded in the distance, then I started moving my way up again a little bit. And I believe I still heard another bugle from that bull after all that. And that must have messed with him a little bit, or he just hunkered down and stayed in his spot. And then I started hearing something rustling around, some brush on fur. And this was not an elk. This was not a deer. And it was kind of eerie because all the dogs went that way. So I was thinking in my head, I was like, I don't know what that is, but that's kind of sketchy. If they chased a cat, lost the cat like right by me, either the cat is going to be so stressed out that it doesn't want, like it'll just get scared of me and run away, which is what my initial instinct is like. But at the same time, it kind of freaks you out having that happen in the middle of the drainage, middle of a hunt. So I just decided to back out. And I was like, I'm not going to mess with this right now. So I started backing out, trying to be pretty quiet. I also at that time, I didn't know if it was a bear. I thought maybe it'd be a black bear or a cat. I wasn't too sure. And I was like, I'm just going to back out, kind of reset a little bit. And at that point, like I knew it was dogs, but I didn't know, and just didn't like have 100% on like what was going on. And I got back to the wheeler, and then of course I saw the 2 pickups with the dog kennels on the back drive by, and I tried like going to catch and wave them down, but they're already gone past the spot that I was at. So I was thinking, I was hemming and hawing. I was like, man, I do not feel like going back in that same spot, in that exact same area. So after thinking about it a little bit, I decided to go up top, park the wheeler on one of those ridges that I could hike down on to get back into that drainage. I still actually heard that bull bugle a few times over the next couple hours. I was hanging out trying to assess like what's the next game plan, but then I did hear the dogs coming back up that drainage again. So I wasn't going to drop in. Like I don't know, with dogs running back and forth in a drainage, even if there's a bull down in there, that just doesn't seem like the best game plan as far as like it just getting messed up. And then I heard something kind of panting behind me. I looked back behind, and then it was one of the dogs right there, and he had the GPS tracker on him and everything, and hung out with him for actually probably about an hour or so. And I was gonna hike down that ridge towards the Bugle, and then I gave him some water and hung out with him, and he was super nice dog. He was cool, but he kept following me, and he would leave for like 5 minutes or so, and he'd come back and hang out with me. And so when I tried going down towards that bull, and he was like right on my leg and just right kind of around me, I was like, okay, this probably isn't going to work out great. So I went back up, ended up getting some service from the satellite messenger, and shot a text over to the owner on his caller. And then eventually the dogs came back again, and then he was tuned in on the dogs barking down there in the drainage, and finally he just went for it. And I'm guessing he just wanted to get in back to all his buddies. So I think he just dove back in and went towards them. And the rest of that day was pretty much shot. I did some scouting on different drainage over. I decided not to go back into that drainage just with all that going on, which kind of sucks. Like in hindsight, like at the time I wasn't, it just is what it is. Stuff happens, just deal with it, move on, try to get the next interaction, the next encounter. But in hindsight, that was a very, very good encounter and hot bull that I could have gotten in on without having to bugle at all. Like that was going to be a good stock. And in hearing, like that was going to be a good bull as well. But this is what it is. Next morning, I decided not to go back into that same drainage. I went up top, and there was some people. So in this area in North Idaho, I do like it. People are pretty good at their hunting etiquette. So a lot of these spots, people are parked on ridges or on drainages. And if you see someone else there, you move on to your next stop. You don't just park next to them and hike in the same area. They kind of let them just hunt it for the day or however long they're there. But, there's some of these, there's many different spots to get into the same drainage or the same ridge. So if you don't know they're there, you might go to a different spot and you might hike in next to them. But if you see that they're there, and why would you want to go onto a spot that someone else is there anyway? So one good thing, people are good about etiquette and communicating. I haven't had any bad experiences yet. Every experience has been great over the last 3 years. So that's one thing that I've definitely liked. And the way I treat it is I try to get up early. I don't like people beating me to spots. So I'll get up at 3 a.m. if I need to. I got up at maybe 3:30, 4 a.m. that next morning. And I hate seeing dust in front of me on the roads when I'm heading to my spot, because that means someone's ahead of me. And that means that they might be going to the same spot that I want to go to. So I try to get up early and beat anyone there, even if I hike in and I need to wait a little bit before I want to move into the spot that I'm trying to get to. But there was some dust, and there was someone parked at the bottom of that drainage, one of the drainages, and got up to the top, chatted with them. They had like 4 guys with them. They were wondering what I was doing. I was planning on hitting the drainage that they're hitting. They're hitting 2 different drainages and hiking all the way down. So that kind of foils that. And I think 4 guys would probably beat me up pretty handedly. So I think I could do anything about that. But the way I see it is, if you're in front of the other person, they get first pick. Like I'll yield to where they're going because they're on the road in front of me. That's the way I look at it anyways. So I pivoted, went one extra ridge above them, but I stuck on the other side of that ridge, so I wasn't going to be messing with their hunt, even though it was a big drainage. So I stayed and I hiked that one all the way down. And this turned out to be where I spent a lot of my time this season, in and around that ridge and a couple other drainages around there. And there was a small cut-in trail eventually down this ridge. And I got in there, got on a bull about halfway down the mountain. Yeah, I got on the bull, and my dad was actually coming back to camp later on that evening. So I just left the four-wheeler up top, and I was just going to get picked up at the bottom later on in the evening. Got the first bugle of the day off of that ridge, an northeast facing slope. Pretty thick area. I was sending out some locator bugles throughout the morning and finally got him to pop off. Waited a little bit, got one more locator bugle, had a good spot. And one thing I was trying to work on this year is being quiet when I'm moving in, but moving quickly. I know last year I ended up just moving way too quiet, and it would take me forever to get in on bulls, but they wouldn't know I was there because I was pretty quiet, especially for brush country. But it's going to take forever to move on a bull if you're moving at a snail's pace. So moved in on him. Then I started going real quiet once I was under 100 yards, or I thought I was under 100 yards. Was moving pretty quickly on his trails. And then eventually I got barked at by a cow, like right in my face, literally 15 yards from me or less. And I was kind of open a little bit, and she was right behind some brush. So I couldn't actually see her, but she was nearby. I could see some brush moving there, barking right in my face. And that was actually probably the most my heart has raced yet the last few years in archery elk hunting, just because it just, sometimes it just builds up. And then, got under control, and what I did right away, and God, that was a fun encounter, just because she was so close, just barking right at me. And I bark bugle back at her right away. I didn't hesitate. I was like, that's my only option, I think, right here. I didn't want the bull to know or think that another bull was nearby, but I didn't think I'd be convincing enough just barking like a cow. So I did kind of the bark bugle. It did that a bunch, and she kept barking at me, and I kept bark bugling back. And eventually she turned around and trotted off. She didn't crash through the brush, but she definitely turned around and got out of there. So after that, I worked my way down and along that ridge and hiked out. So I found their bedroom. I hiked down, kept following their trail, found their bedroom down in that area, found some wallows and a couple different little creek bottoms. Hiked back out the other side and actually bumped. It must have been her. I don't think it was a bull. And I actually bumped. I'm pretty sure cows, just judging by the way they ran through, not hearing antlers crashing. It was more so elk running through the woods, through the thick brush. Bumped either her or some other cows towards the top of that creek. Got up to this main ridge that I found when I was scouting, where there's a little trail that someone cut in along this whole ridge that just gradually goes up towards the mountain over the course of a couple miles. And hiked down that, ended up busting another cow a little further down. And I just kind of worked my way out. I didn't want to keep trying to get on those elk that day after bumping them. So that was day 4, September 21st. Headed back to camp at dark. Got up that next morning and went up. I went down the ridge, actually. I went to that same spot where I got picked up, that trailhead, and I worked in the bottom. And in my head, I was thinking that bull and the cows were going to bust down into that drainage. And I did find a lot of sign. I found beds in there. It was real wet. It rained overnight and a little bit in the morning. So my boots, my feet were soaked. That's another thing I'll go through is the boots that I use, which are not the most waterproof, but they're definitely well used at this point. And spent all morning getting in on them and couldn't get on them. I think I bumped a deer, but they just were not in that area. So I came out. I went all the way back to the trailhead and then decided to go up the ridge. Went up that ridge, and on the next drainage over, I was throwing out some locator bugles and ended up getting another bullet answer. This was an open ridge all the way up with trees on one side, about halfway open on the ridge and on that west slope of that ridge, which was awesome because there's not a lot of open areas around North Idaho. And I moved in on the trees. He was in the clump of trees at the bottom of that drainage. And the wind was good, so I got around on the top side of the drainage from him. And I moved in. And I knew solo calling, I knew this was going to be an issue, but trying to get in on him to where he wouldn't hang up. So I got in close. I tried to get behind some bushes that were outside of the main copse of trees, and then I would try to call behind me, and I really tried to get him heated up, and he came up real close, and I should have tried to work him a little bit more, and then I moved up probably 20 yards to this little spot, this little outcropping of trees, and then he was down in the trees right here, and I should have worked him up a little bit more. But what I was trying to do when I felt him coming in was I would try to move up closer, but then he wouldn't be worked up enough to want to come in any further. And he definitely didn't want to show himself because he's smart. He didn't want to walk out in the open if he didn't see what he was looking for. He didn't see another bull out there. And I got ready, got knocked up, and I was just waiting. I was ready to be on my knees to take the shot if he came out. It was most likely going to be frontal, but I was trying to figure out an angle to get him to walk by broadside, but I just didn't think it was going to happen the way that setup was. And honestly, he knew where I was at. They're smart. They know. They can echolocate me a lot easier than I can them. So he knew exactly where I was at. And I saw the trees brushing. I saw it moving and almost saw his face through there. And then he just didn't like what he was seeing and hearing. And he just slowly turned around, and I could tell he was moving off. And that was that interaction. Got him hung up. He was there for a little bit, bugled back and forth, somewhat heated, but not enough to where he wanted to show himself. If he didn't see another bull there, he kind of felt the situation was off. And that was fun. It was great to have my first interaction, first call in. I was pretty pumped about that of the season. And that was day 5, September 22nd. So I'd gotten into bulls on my second day. So day 1, I heard some bugles in the evening. Day 2, working towards it, got foiled. So actually got in some decent action pretty early on. Called in a bull on day 5. Day 4, I was working down and got a cow that busted me and working in on me. So not a bad start to the season. Had some action. I knew where they were at. There's a bull in that drainage. There was another bull and a bunch of cows in the other drainage. I'd found their bedroom, found some good areas with several different ridges that I could hike on that are actually open with good access points to each one. So I didn't know all that yet, but at that point, I had a couple different bulls to go off of. I backed out after that interaction. It was close to dark. And I wanted to keep hunting him, but since he already hung up and got out of there, I figured it was best just to back out instead of bumping him. And I heard another bugle as I was backing out up on top of the ridge. Or at least it's what I thought I heard. It was real faint as I was backing out. And that set me up for my play the next day. I was going right back to that same trailhead. And the next day, day 6, was the best day of hunting I've probably had so far. Where I wasn't necessarily successful and killed. Or even along with that, like the action that I had that next day was probably on par with, or almost on par with, days where I have taken tagged an animal, because I had a lot of action and it was awesome. And that's what I'm going to start with on the next recap of episode 2 of 2025 season. So if you're watching this replay, go check that out next. Starts out with some awesome action. I'm going to do this series either 2 or 3 episodes. This one turned out to be about 10 to 16 minutes longer than I thought it was going to be, just from rambling, but that's okay. And if I ramble a little bit more, I'll probably do 3 episodes. So my whole goal of this series is to show the nitty-gritty of a somewhat new archery elk hunter, the highs, the lows, and the unexpected challenges. Something to easily watch and follow along on my interactions and my encounters throughout my season. So continue on to day 2, and we'll see you guys on the next. Thanks for watching. All right.